So I guess I'm going to just carefully flip this guy over. Make sure it's still all pushed and seated exactly where it needs to be. Okay, kind of really liking that pocket the way that is. So I'm going to take my little drill bit and go in here and just kind of, hopefully this will coax some marks out for it. And it's chipping the paint. This paint job on this guitar is really cheap and chippy, crappy. It's probably going to crack and chip and stuff because it's just falling apart under normal maintenance kind of tasks. It's falling apart. So, you know, it was dipped. Like I said earlier, this was dipped in some paint, and it probably wasn't the highest quality, highest cost paint. And I like how it looks. I mean, I've said on forums and stuff and all the guitar groups that I'm a member of that all my guitars have to look like spree candy. I always say that they need to look like spree candies for me to be happy with them. So okay, that's looking pretty good. And now just momentarily here, I'm going to go ahead and loosen and remove the strings, the 2 strings I put on there to test it. And I'm going to leave them on. I'm going to leave these on and just bring that one back. Like I said earlier, something anyone can do with a brand spanking new string they don't want to be wasteful about. And you know, of course, high E strings are the big deal. Like Doctor, or I call them Doctor, DR, on several packs of strings they sell. I think the Veritas ones are one of them I can remember right off that do this. They actually give you extra high E strings right there in the package because they already know that that's more likely to break. And we can see there's my little points as it's lined up. I'm going to go ahead and compare that to the back of this other neck and see if they get close to each other. And it looks like there's there's definitely a difference. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if this neck is actually seated exactly right. I hope it is, obviously. So yeah, because it seems like, and of course the holes on this aren't exactly right either. I noticed that they don't look like they are really lined up just right. So there's where that goes. Now, if I want to take the bolt that's going to go on it and then just look at the body on the edge of the guitar here, and then I can just pinch where on the bolt is actually getting into. So what I did, I'll show you here. I held this up to the depth so that the top of it, and actually there's a little spacer, so it's actually going to be a little bit less than this, and then just pinch right where that goes. That's going to be your amount that you're aiming for when you go ahead and drill the hole into the back of the neck. So I'm only going to be drilling in about this much. Okay, if you do more than that, get ready to mess up. And this might not be perfect, but you know, like I said, the holes are not exactly perfect that I'm dealing with. They've got kind of a little bit of an angle to them, and maybe they weren't lined up exactly perfectly in the factory. So yeah, let's hope that this works out right. Now as it goes up against the body here, it's much tighter and closer to the edge of the pocket, and as it reaches the other side, it gets lower. So this part where your higher strings are, we're getting a lower, are getting further away from it, and that's what you can see in the pocket. So that shouldn't be inaccurate that it's doing that, I don't think. So by lining this depth up with my drill, which I have here, and I'm going in there like that, I can pinch off pretty close to where I know I want to be for that. And it's just going to be a little bit. It's really not going to be much. Then I can grab my my tape that I've got here and just peel off a nice little chunk of it. Doesn't have to be neat because you're just wrapping it around there. And then I'm going to get in here and right about where I know I want that to be, I'm going to wrap around the screw just to, now some people put just a nice little tag, whatever. This is just so I don't have stuff sticking out everywhere. So now I'm going to do the whole measurement test that I just did one more time. I'm lining up my screw with the top where the pocket is. I'm pinching with my fingers where that is, and then I'm going down here and testing with the bit, and it levels right out. So no, this isn't going into the neck really deep. I don't think this is turning right. Maybe my bit isn't sharp enough to do this. It's definitely spinning. Or it could be, I'm thinking it's a dull bit. There we go. That's the ratchet. Okay. Now, I don't want to do this much. I don't want it to be a huge hole either. If you're putting a bolt system in your guitar, you do want a larger nut. What this is going to be is enough for that bolt screw to get a nice bite on it. And then it's going to do its job. But on some guitars, or in other situations, you might want a larger drill bit that's going to match that. But with this is, these are essentially pilot holes, and that's it. And they don't need to really be gigantic. And now what I'm doing is I'm going to go ahead and let's see. I think as this lined up, this hole has 2 notches. And I don't know if the notch here is the right one or there. I'm thinking by the look of it, it's the one closest to me because of the distances there. So I don't want to mess up and hit the top one first. I want to make sure to get the right one. So I'm going to go ahead and put the neck on the guitar again. And let's slot that in there, flip it over, get that same feel that I had for the other one, and we're going to go ahead and put this on. I know the back ones are essentially perfect, and so we'll go ahead and put this bit to work. For now, okay. Now we've just reached the guitar. Okay, that's got it. I've got that on there. So I don't remember what side. I think it was this side, so I think I'll try this one real quick. I don't know, actually I have to probably be smarter, and usually you do them catty corner, but because in this case I need to actually find the top one, I'm going to go ahead and do the back 2 bolts. And see, they're going in at kind of a slight angle. That's because in the factory, when they put this together, they did that. And some people do that on purpose. Some people do it, and it's just a variety kind of thing. Like maybe it turned slightly as it was being put in. As that's grabbing on, it's pushing away. So I need to take it out. That's right where it's touching. Okay, so I know that guy's in there. Okay. I think it might have been this one. So I'm going to try it real quick. And there's a little room, which is not exactly good. So, but again, I'm just testing it. So that went through. So with both of those in, knowing that it's level, I'm going to go ahead and do this again. And hopefully we'll get an accurate type of feel for that. Alright, so I finally got the neck on, at least to test out stuff at first. So, and that was actually a little bit harder because the holes were for the original bolts, and they were quite a bit thinner than what I was using. So I had to widen them and then re-drill them and just all kinds of stuff like that. And test them, and then it took the neck on and off probably 4 times just getting things lined up the way I wanted to, and they might not even be right as they are. So this is a test run for the neck, and also I need to put the string trees on. So we're going to go ahead and just go ahead and string it up and see how much, see if we can do some band damage here. I'm hoping that once this is all done, I'll have a really nice, new-ish, playable kind of, and of course this isn't going to be, this I'm not even going to dare kind of even try to sell, although I did consider getting a fake Fender logo. You know, some spaghetti letter Fender logo, just to have fun with this and make it a true fake. But you know, and I know probably a lot of people who know nothing about electric guitars might say, oh, you've got a fender, and oh wow, it says made in whatever. I don't think I'm going to do that though, but I did think about it. It had crossed my mind, hey, why don't I just make this fake? And I've seen those. I've actually seen them on eBay where people buy those up or create them. They create a they create themselves a what's called a parts caster, and then put it up on eBay or something for sale and say, oh, this has this or that parts and stuff. And sometimes they have a neck that you can tell is not a fender neck, but they went ahead and put a fender decal on it just for fun. So yeah, I'm going to have to put the roller saddle on, so I'll be seeing where those line up on here on the headstock to make sure and then they're meant to line up with the high E, the B, G, and the D strings. If you're using two of them, if you're using one, then it's the high E and the B string. I guess that really depends on you which one you want to line it up with. So this is on here. It looks flush. It looks good. It's on there. The pocket is definitely not the flattest, cleanest neck pocket I've ever seen. Maybe it's the most not clean, funky, and imbalanced neck pocket I've ever seen. But definitely got buzzing. But of course this is going to come up. The bridge is going to come up. This is going to take intonation and all kinds of stuff like that, and to be properly tested out. So what's next is setting it up for the string trees, and then we're going to do all of those intonation processes. So now I have a package of the string trees that have the little they don't really roll, but I guess I call them roller trees, and the screws that go with them. When I bought them a few years ago, I just go ahead and replace all of my Strats with the bent metal type of string trees. I replace all of those bent metal string trees with these type because I just don't like, in my mind, it's this like snaggy mess going on when the string is going across that part. So it ends up, you've got this, and this is holding down the string. Now to find out where you want it to be, you can look where I put that on this, which already has them on, and this is a pretty good location for them because you want the middle of this to line up with the middle of the two strings that are going to use that. So right here, that's the middle of that part, and it goes in a straight line and lines right up with the middle of this. So that means that the string on this side, as it lines up to reach out to the nut, is going to fit under that bar. And then the one up above it, as it lines up and comes down from the edge of the tuning peg, will line up with this bar before it reaches the nut, and so on. So the middle here, from this middle point right here in a basically a straight line, that's where that's going to line up. And it may be a tiny bit offset to match the spread that the string's going to have before it fans out to reach the nut. So it kind of, they pinch in and pull in before they come down to the tuning machines. So I don't know, I think the placement of these seems good to me. I don't think they're too far off or anything. I think they're in the right spots. But they each have a little fixing peg right there. You can even see, try to show this a little easier way to show this, but there we there's a peg on the bottom of it. And that peg is going to seat down into the wood, and then right in front of the peg is another hole for the screw that fixes it down. So it's 2 points of contact. The peg keeps it from swaying left and right, and the screw holds it down firm and seats it to the headstock. And you want them to be straight as much as you can, and you want them to line up just right with the strings. So yeah, so to find that out, I might just approximate using this first neck by just kind of lining up the nut here, and then I can look here, or maybe even better, lining up the tuning machines and then looking at them, and I can see that right here by this tuning machine is going to line up right there with the middle here. And so in this case, I'm not going to use something as harsh as a marker because I may want to go ahead and change this. So I'm going to use this pencil. I use a little Statler drafting pencil kind of thing here to make a soft impression where I think this might go. So I'm looking here at the edge of this one in the middle here as it comes straight down before they fan out to reach this, and then I can see this is an edge and it comes right up about here from the distance to there. And there, I gotta put a little tiny dot right there. Then I know right in front of it, exactly in front of it, is going to be a second dot for the peg. So that looks pretty good right there. And then the next one is going to be up and to the right from that one. It's going to be lined up in between these two, but more closely to this second tuning machine as it comes up here. And I can see then it will line up with these two. That's going to come all the way down here and end up about right here in the headstock area. And I don't want them to be I don't want them to get in the way of any of the other strings, of course. That's the most important thing. So as that comes out and lines up, I'm going to go ahead and just put a dot. And I feel like that's a little too far to the right, so yeah. There. Now after I make these first kind of impression dots, I'm going to use a straight edge to see exactly how they do really line up, to make sure I'm not making a mistake. So I guess I could use a pencil. I don't think I'm going to do that though. I can use several things that I know are going to line up straight. Let's see, my nose kind of got stuffy. Can use the edge of this, and now I'm lining it up with the middle there, and that does line up. The first one lines up perfectly. And I go move up here. See, there it is. Move up here to the middle here, and I can see that that's lining up pretty much perfectly with that right there. Now if I put this here to look, just to look at, kind of get an idea of where it's going to line up, I can test it out a little. I can pick this up and pinch down that string. So I'll just go ahead and push down a little bit on it, and then just set this about where it will go, and kind of get a look at it. It's not very easy because this is kind of a tiny thing to deal with, but there we go. I lined it up, and that does look like, as long as it's just pulling it down and the string's not having to do some kind of big yank off to one side or the other, then you know it's a pretty good spot for it. Okay, and I think that's a pretty good spot for both of those. So I'm going to get these two screws ready. Alright, now for this work, it's not too hard. I'm going to just at first start very carefully with a, let's see here. I don't know if this bit is too big. I have a much smaller bit somewhere, and I usually use that for these, so I'm gonna probably go get that bit really quick here just to do this. Alright, so I've got the first one in. It feels good and sturdy. Now we're going to go ahead and start the one for the high E. I'm going to start a soft spot for it to catch, and then I'm just using my fingers and a drill bit. Okay, I'm going to test that out for this little spacer. Okay. Okay, that's almost lined up. And so yeah, I'll go ahead and use the handle for the bit to get a little more oomph out of it. That's good. And now I'll go ahead and try it out. Catch right in there. There. Now it's caught, and I can see that the string, once it's up where it's supposed to be, is being held down right there where it needs to be held down. Alright. So I'm going to spin that around. And I'm not going to lie and say this is easy with that string in the way, but it should still be okay. I'll just go ahead and go under it, line up the peg, and then straighten it out. Punch a little starter bit here to go by, and it's very close. These are right next to each other, so it feels like they're almost like intruding on each other, but you want them to have just the ever slightest bit of distance. To start that out, and I think that's a little off to the side. I don't want it to be. With that fixed in there where I want it to be. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and try to get it to catch on. Okay. I don't know. I might need to change how that's seated there. I don't like it. I think it's off to the side some. So I'll probably go ahead and start a different spot right next to it. And this isn't deep enough for the screw to really go in, so I should be able to correct it, and it will be okay. It'll just be covered up by the screw as I get closer to where I want it to be. And just like one way, if you find that you have too loose of a screw hole and you want to try to get that fixed, one way you can handle that is with a toothpick, or maybe a toothpick and some glue. Works great. So suppose you take your pick guard off, your scratch guard, finger guard thing off there, and maybe you don't like how it ends up looking, or your stuff doesn't line up right. When you want to fill in to catch it, you can just use toothpicks and glue. I've seen that. And also with your, suppose you have a loose strap nub, and then you can put some toothpicks in there and glue, and then file it off a little bit or something, and then put the screw in for the thing, and it will catch just pretty much like it's catching onto fresh wood, because it kind of is. So yeah, I don't like how this one is looking though. It's too far over to the side for my comfort. So I'm going to try to fix that before it gets too deep in that hole there. Okay, so I butchered it, but I'm going to line this up, and there, that's better. That's a lot better. It's over there and it's a lot closer. I think it's probably going to shift over to the side once I try to get this in. And that's pretty darn close. So I'm going to back off just a hair so it can seat. And that's got it. That's straight. And it's got the peg lined up just perfect. So this is nice and straight and strong. This one's got a tiny bit of give way, but that's okay. It's still, as long as it's firm, and when the strings come under it, it lifts up and it doesn't move. That's good. So we've got both of these string trees on there, ready for strings to be added. Okay, so when I add my strings, I'm gonna, obviously go up through the back of this. So here, next, this 46 is already on here for the test. 36 can go on, and I'm sure you guys know how to do strings. Alright, I got it strung up, and I'm going to go ahead and just stretch the strings a little bit. You want to stretch your strings out just a little bit. It will help tuning stability. When you find that, oh, this thing will not stay in tune no matter what, there's a good chance it's because you just put fresh, you just put fresh strings on it, and that's scooted, and it's not keeping up because you just put fresh strings on it. So once you put strings on it, you want to make sure to stretch them out a little bit, just a little. You don't want to be really rough, because especially with 9s and 8s, you will just snap your fresh strings you just put on it. 10s even, if you're not careful, you'll snap them right away. And so you want to be careful when you stretch them out, but you definitely want to give them a little bit of a stretch. And so this looks like it's got pretty low action already. I haven't adjusted the saddles at all. I did was strung it up. And as you can see, I've got the string trees on there holding firm, and they're nice and straight. They're looking pretty good. I like them. They look great. Okay. The neck's in there. It's not fidgeted around. If anything, you know, this is definitely, unless I have to move too much stuff around, I don't think there's any shim thing going on here. I'm not going to need to shim anything. It looks really good. So I'm going to go ahead and hook up a tuner, and I might go ahead and turn a little bit, just a hair this away, and bring up the camera just a little teensy bit. There we go, just for some fun. And I'm going to tune this. Now, I've heard that you should never tune a guitar when it's on its back, and that there are variants, varieties of different things that'll happen if you do that. And I've seen tons of people where they always tune their guitars. And I'll tell you, I imagine on some kind of really sensitive floating tremolo, you might end up with that situation. I don't know. I'm not going to say that I believe that. But I haven't seen it. And I feel slightly safer tuning my instrument when it's on its back, at least to start with. So maybe a fine tuning after you're done. When it's up in the playing position makes sense. Maybe that makes sense. So you're fine tuning your instrument. Okay, yeah, this is coming up quite a bit, I can see. But I'm not going to say that you have to tune your instrument with it up in the playing position. That's just not true. You can tune it on its back, and it's fine. And in some cases, it's not going to matter at all. And you'll pick it up and it'll sound exactly the same. I think it may have a lot to do with the sensitivity of the bridge. And this guy's cranking way, way up. So I can already tell the springs are going crazy. So before I go any further, it's nowhere near being tuned, but before I do anything else tuning wise, I'm going to go ahead and tighten up these springs to get this, to get it closer, because my action is going crazy. So I've got this guy ready, I think, for this very thing. And I'm going to go ahead and excite this claw up into the body. And of course, when I did this, I left a whole heck of a lot of extra room for this very event, in case you are trying to get your bridge just right and you realize, hey, wait a minute, it's climbing way, way up off there. And what this is looking like is it's almost all the way there, and I'm still getting it up a little bit here. So now we're going to check, and it's still pretty high up. Yeah. So I might need to put that third spring on there, possibly. I don't know. We'll see. I wanted to just have two because it makes it easier, but we'll see. Now of course E's higher. So as I loosen up, now it's going to lower the bridge. And I've actually had, back in the day when I was just a kid learning how to tune my guitar, and I was using 8s or 9s or something, I would have a string snap and hit me. Probably because I was dumb and had my head hawked down in front of the thing. And I don't want that. So when I do this to tighten it up, I keep my hand right here over everything. And that's going to make me feel safer. Yeah, it's coming way, way up still. So I know this is too high. This is way too high action for what I'm going to end up wanting. So I'm going to tighten those springs some more. But I think they're a little close, so I might need to go ahead and put an extra spring on there, which I really didn't want to have to do, but these might just be weaker, flimsier, kind of floppier. I don't know, maybe that's better for the springs or something. So I'm going to go ahead and fish that out. I'm going to check it out and see. Alright, so I've got the spring, extra spring on. I've got the strings tuned now, but because I want this to have just a hair of upward action, I'm going to have to loosen them just a tiny, tiny bit. They're way up against it, so I'm going to go ahead and loosen just a hair. Then we're going to test out. Now this will lower it so they're not in tune anymore. Almost there. Now, and it's up just a tiny bit, but still not quite there. Okay, we're going to go ahead and give it a test. And just for a first little test, it's good. It's good. There's just obviously a couple strings too high, a couple strings too low. The neck action looks pretty close to where I'm going to want it to be. If I test, it's basically got only the faintest speck of any kind of relief. And like I said earlier, well actually the nut looks pretty darn close now. I think the nut has decided to grab the string and has fitted itself happily. Hopefully it's not too pinchy. I might need to file the nut anyway. So okay, this is a good first starting point to continue setting this up. So almost done, and then we're going to have kind of an overall look over the whole thing and a test. So I got the strings almost lined up perfectly. Not getting enough bridge rised up for what I'm wanting though, so I'm going to have to loosen the springs a little, but I do like the height. I had to do a lot of work on the saddles to lower them down, but they sound really good. It's got a good sound to it. A little bit of a little too close here and there. I still need to fine tune some things. But yeah, she's almost done. I got a Impossible Whopper. Put some vegan cheese on it, vegan mayo. Heated it up, heated the bottom half up a little bit in the microwave with the cheese. And some fries and salty fries. My oldest son and my oldest daughter just came back, and they had got this for me because I haven't eaten yet today. Just a little bit of chips this morning. And he got me a Coke. So yeah. So I'm going to eat this. Do a little bit more fine tuning, then we'll do a whole look over the entire thing, and then I'm going to plug in the amp and make it make noise. Alright, so I've done the nut. I've went ahead and filed it. As I said, it seemed to be ready for 10s. The 13 seemed to fit okay, and the 17 did, but I went ahead and hit the 23, or the 26, the 36, and the 46 to bring the nut down to where it needs to be. I've got everything leveled out. The strings are good. I did have to address a couple more frets, and I think I'm going to have to address one more fret, and then the fret in the pocket, which I think is kind of getting in the way of the adjacent fretting area here on the fretboard. So the bottom three are fine, but then when I get up here, it's blocking out just a hair. Okay, so these top three get blocked out. I've also noticed that I'm getting a lot lower as I fine tune everything, because I've got the action really low now. And I went ahead and made the neck as straight as I could to just see. I've been through several different settings with the relief to try to make sure I know exactly where I want it to end up being. And so I think I might go ahead and shim this neck because of how low all of these saddles are ended up getting. And the problem is, though, with shimming it is with the high E, excuse me, with the high E, it's not exactly low as far as the posts go. So the posts are actually going to be raising that up if the shim is on. But every other saddle has went down enough, I think. And you know, the way I think about it is once you add that shim and the neck is tilted back a little bit, then the natural relief from the neck is going to agree more with the saddles as they're raised up. So it should work out well. But so I have two frets that I want to deal with. I think one of them on here, and that's something that might happen, is as you go over your neck and get all the frets done, you may end up finding out, oh, I just treated this or that fret, doing maybe individual work after you've done the whole level crown polish, and it will reveal another fret nearby that also needs a little bit of help. And so I have two. There are two. One's down here. I think maybe this one, someone here, and then I know I want to just go ahead and drop down this pocket fret pretty low. I want to get this beneath this so everything behind it will be nice and clean, and I'm going to shim the neck. So after I shim the neck, then all of these saddles are going to go up, and they'll probably be up to their near maximum, and I already have the angle of the bridge exactly where I want it. I put a tiny bit of lift on it. I can show better from this angle. You can see there's just a tiny bit of lift on it so that it can get up and down action with your trem bar. So I'm glad that these little small fine-tuning parts are needing to be addressed, because other than those two things, the guitar is having a really nice sound and good playability. I really like the neck. I think it's really good. I also tightened the string trees to get them just a hair lower and more firm. One was just a tiny bit high, and the other one needed tightened a little. And so now I think those are really good. The guitar has a really good sound to it, but as you might be able to hear with this strum, there's just a kind of hair of a buzz going on. And remember, this is flat, so once your neck is, so that means when I take this neck off, it's actually going to have a back bow. Because under tension, if the neck is flat, when you take it off, there's no tension, you're going to have a back bow. So I'll have to straighten the neck for those 2 frets that need addressed. And then when it's back on the instrument, it's going to have a slight forward bow, some relief. And what I'm hoping is that once the forward bow is on and the saddles are raised up, and whatever fine-tuning little adjustments need to take place after that, then we won't have any buzzing. Now when you are whacking at the strings hard with a nice thick rigid plastic pick, you're going to get little buzzy noises here and there occasionally. It's pretty much impossible to eliminate all buzzes from a guitar. And I've seen videos where some super expensive, like $2,000 or $3,000 guitars, and a guy was like, "What causes buzz?" It was a video, maybe it was Rhett Shull or someone like that, went to a guitar store and said, "What about fret buzz? How do we deal with it? What causes it and stuff?" And he said, "Oh well, let's take down this $2,500 guitar," and he played it, and there was fret buzz. And then he said, it's essentially impossible to 100% eliminate fret buzz, and it has to do with all kinds of factors. But I don't want any soft strumming buzzing noises. I mean, if I start going barbarian metal stroking kind of hard vibrations, then yeah, you're probably going to get some little buzzes. And of course, and I think this might be a 9.5 radius. I was checking with my little radius gauges, and I think it's a relatively curvaceous radius going on here. It's not a 7-ish, but it's definitely not an 11 or a 12, and that comes into play too a little tiny bit. So I also had to replace one of the strings when I was taking them off for that second once over on the frets. So that's something that happens occasionally. But yeah, these are going to come off. Then I'm going to actually remove the neck again, shim the neck, put it back on, get the strings back on, and then raise the saddles, and then try to get a good fine tuning here, and all that's going to happen. Then we're going to do a sound test. I'd considered possibly putting some custom knobs on it, but I might wait till later to do that because I like that they're kind of stratty looking and they match the scratch board here. And so this has turned out really nice looking, and the nut work turned out great. I'm really happy with it. There's just the perfect amount, almost like a sheet of paper clearance for the strings when the 3rd fret is pushed down, and then I'm checking at the 1st fret for each of them, and that's what I want. And I was as careful as I could possibly be because it's pretty easy to go just that couple of hairs too low on your nut, and then it's not fun. After that, it's just all bad from that point on. So you have to really, as when you're doing nut work, you're gonna maybe take your string off like this, and then you're going to file towards the tuning machine, not flat across because that's going to wreck it. Towards the tuning machine, make sure not to hit the headstock or anything like that. And you file a little check, file a little check, file a little check, file a little check. If you file a whole bunch and then check, oops, it's way, way too low. And so you definitely don't want to be there with it. I think this is going to be a really good, cheap, custom instrument when it's finally finished. So the next step, I'm going to do all that other work off camera, so the next video should be a sound test for this custom. A little show off. All right. Really got good sound. I like it. Shimmed it, filed the nut, checked it around a little more to widen it. I went ahead and put some graphite, just some pencil on it, which I probably won't do too much more because I really don't like the residue it leaves behind. I'd like to use something else. I don't want to use anything called lizard spit or monkey sweat or whatever nastiness they call their string lubrication nowadays, but I'm sure there's something out there. I thought of using maybe silicone lubricant, or using some type of, maybe, I don't know, maybe like Hopsate gun oil or something that might work well. But yeah, it's got a really nice ring to it. Don't know how well you can hear it over there. Now these are those, like I said, the Wilkinson pickups, Wilkinson bridge. Brand new fake fender neck. This is not a real one. I don't think it is anyway. I don't think they would make any without that wooden core around the truss rod. Now I worked on the frets 3 times in total to try to eliminate any and all buzzing. So kind of a checklist of all the stuff that I had to go through to set this thing up. First off, I had to cut off parts of the hole for the bridge to fit down into. Okay, that sucked. But then when I got the bridge in, that was nice. Then I went ahead and cut out some more of the nasty paint left over from the inside and from around it and stuff. Checked out the inside and the workings of it. Saw that it had dime pots, but really good looking wiring, and that the pickups looked pretty good. So then I got the neck. The neck needed a lot of work. I mean, it came almost perfectly flat, which is probably a good sign. Went ahead and gave it the edge treatment. Got all the little sharp anythings and rounded every edge of every fret. did a level crown polish on the frets, and then I set up the string trees, the tuning machines, then the string trees. Then I set up the neck. I actually attached the neck, and then set up the guitar. When I set up the guitar, I found out that the saddles were a little bit too low, so I went ahead and took off the neck and did a couple more fret jobs just in certain spots, and then checked everything over and over again. And there are a couple of things about the guitar that are still kind of like up here on some of the higher frets. I'm not liking how good the contact is, but it's really up in these lower notes, up on the high stuff, that I probably will never use. But I'm going to probably work on that anyway. I'm going to go in and do a probably a 5 fret little grind down and get all these nice and low and even, so that they never disturb the frets leading up to them, and they don't disturb each other. And now on the lower part, we're getting good contact. Until you start getting into the thicker strings, then it starts to not be such great contact. So, but that's good. It's just about here, like it was before. I noticed when I added relief, it helped. So what that's telling me is that even though all this was flat and the rocker was telling me everything was good, that once it's in the pocket and the strings are lined up, then this still isn't exactly perfect right here. So like I said, I'm going to go in and fix that. For now though, it's all good and it's playing very, very well. As you can hear, it sounds like it's got a really good sound. So I can after some of the, when I first set the neck up, before adding the shim, it had just absolute great stability with tuning. But after I added the shim and then reset up the saddles, I also had to adjust the tension on the spring claw to get the bridge where I wanted it. And so I think that affected the tuning stability. It is in tune now though, and it's survived that whole little mess right there. And I'm just noodling a little bit. I'm not playing, any of my songs or anything like that. I'm just kind of testing things out. I like to use orchestrated chords. I like to use chords that sweep the entire neck. And just test things out, Test everything out. So yeah, probably it's not, I'd say it's 98%. And there are a few little tiny things I could do to get it a little bit better. So yeah, this was a fun little experiment, turning a Glarry GST II into kind of a even more fake Fender Stratocaster kind of guitar. 6-screw bent metal saddle bridge, obviously based on the Fender design, but by Wilkinson. Already had the Wilkinson single coils kind of as the upgrade. The nut is bone, I'm pretty sure, but I don't know. I would say that, I'm pretty much positive it's bone. It acts like bone when I cut it. It's very quick to cut and light and rigid, and it resonates well. So that, I think that that's that. These tuners, I think, like I said, were off of an effing guitar that I had, which are one of my favorites from a house brand from I think Butler Music, which is a shop that I bought several guitars from. Had a lot of fun and positive experiences with them. I got a gold top LP style Oscar Schmidt Washburn guitar from them. I got two effing guitars from them. Again, like I said, that's their house brand, and they're both extremely good instruments, especially for the cost. They were really, really great and play great. Both of them were really great players. And I think I got another guitar from them somewhere in the mix. So yeah, and I really love house brands. I love it when someone's like, oh, we had this or that guitar made for our store. I don't really think when these stores get house brands made for their store, for their shop, or whatever, I don't think they want a crappy guitar with their name on it. So usually they will get the better stuff from the lower end that the factories make. And that's what I've noticed is the bodies of both of the effing guitars are really super good. And the necks are very, very good. The pickups are pretty good. They just are really sturdy and stable. They also have a curved neck pocket on the back, which is kind of an enhancement that you see on some of those. They remind me of the Strats that Stag did, but I'd say they're probably a notch better than those. The nut was okay on them. The tuning machines are not too awful bad. And kind of a tip if you're like me and upgrade a ton of guitars and then therefore you have a massive amount of old cheap tuning machines hiding away somewhere that you can use if you need to. A good way to identify the good ones from the bad ones is if they have anything stamped at all on the back of them. Like the very, very cheapest ones won't have anything stamped. They'll just be flat and kind of maybe even look a little bumpier, like they didn't have as good of a metal involved in the construction. But then a couple of grades better tuning machines, but still generic, what would be considered crappy tuning machines, will have maybe a number or some letters on it, and then even step above that, low-end tuning machines will have a name or something. And when I upgraded one of my effing guitars, my Fiesta Red, I put locking tuning machines on it, which was really great. I recommend those because they're super fun. And so the leftover tuning machines from it, I decided to use on this guitar because there was never anything wrong with them. I just wanted to try some locking tuning machines and put them on there. Now my second effing guitar is actually called a Lucky Penny, and in its design it looks a lot like the Fiesta Red effing guitar, but it actually has a heavier, better body, and one of the pickups on it actually failed on the instrument, so I went ahead and I upgraded one of the single coils on it, so it has a more distinct sound. And it's usually that I use the bridge pickup. I'm one of those guys where if I really had to, I could be totally okay with just a humbucker or even a good single coil just in the bridge position and maybe nothing but a volume knob, and I'd be fine doing what I do, because that's the sound that I really like. So if I run through each of the settings, I'll go and start on the neck. One notch up, so it's combining these two guys. Middle one, at the back. Now, of course, the combined middle and bridge pickup aren't really bad, but it's quieter. And, if I was going to choose between the ability to combine two single coils towards the bridge, I'd just pick a humbucker instead, which like I showed earlier in the video, this, if I replaced the pick guard, could have a humbucker, single coil humbucker, humbucker, single coil, single coil, single coil, single coil humbucker, or humbucker, blank humbucker, however you want to, do that kind of setup. So it's very versatile, and I might do that one day. I might go ahead and take this pick guard off and go ahead and put a zebra pup or something really loud and crunchy in this end of the guitar. But right now I really like this. I'm going to go the two combined. And then my favorite bridge stuff. Immediately brighter and sharper and crunchier and louder, like pretty much anything right next to the bridge is going to be. And you can balance these all out. One luthier that I have the highest level of respect for. Actually, I'll just say he's the guy who does Gelvin guitars. He did the Guitar Doctor. Super great, like the most informative and rewarding and I would say fortified videos. He shows his luthier techniques. He makes one piece and gorgeous guitars that are incredible. They're like nothing else you've ever seen. He does, in my opinion, he's one of the more underrated. But he is, really. I don't know. He's very open with his secrets and techniques, and also he does videos on setup and things. He can show you how to do that. And he said how to set up each of your pickups so that you're not getting drastic volume drops when you start cycling through them. And I had never even thought about that. Actually, I was thinking, what if I want to set it up so hitting this switch gives me an immediate volume drop because of the location of a pickup or something. But then, I saw where he was coming from with, your basic setup of an instrument and the results you're going to want from moving your switch to turn off and on certain pickups. You probably aren't going to want, by default, a big drastic drop in volume in between pickups. So adjusting those to keep the volume level, but then having those little eccentricities between the combinations of pickups and what pickup you're choosing, either one or two together, or middle or two together towards the bridge, or just the bridge alone. Which is a really great thing about Strats, is just the sheer versatility. Strats can pretty much do anything: country, rock, hard rock, anything you can come up with. And I guess you could say that about any guitar if some guy out there really wanted it. But the fact that you can just fine tune and adjust every little tiny thing, like for instance, this one came with a pretty crappy low to no sustain 6 screw. And, just by measuring the space in between the screws and then having the information on the product on eBay, I knew solely on string spacing and the width of it that this would work in this guitar. I knew that by measuring the neck pocket, and on a lot of these, you can find out, of course, but on this style of guitar, you'll often find a certain size of neck pocket. Not always. It's not, definitely not, but it's not guaranteed you're going to find that. There are some of it out there. Maybe I think Alan Eden guitars is one of them. They use a little different neck pocket size. So you're not just going to pick any Strat body and any Strat neck and slap them together. They're not as, Lego brickish as something like maybe Ibanez guitars, which I have one that I call an Ibenstein that I bought that's actually parts from 3 different Ibanez's, and it's an exceptional instrument. Plays really great and fast. It actually has prestige pickups for your 2 humbuckers, and then the middle is an Infinity 3. Has a great body, has a really, really great neck. The one weak point on it that, you know, Ibanez fans might point out would be that it has the Edge 3 tremolo, which I actually like. It's light and it performs well, but it does. I wouldn't say it's like the greatest floating tremolo that you ever saw, but it's an excellent guitar. I really love it. It's used, but it was a really great idea to get it. And but you know, as far as the versatility of Leo Fender's invention, which is what all these are based off of, and if you're one of these, you know, critical finger pointers who's going to say, you know, you got to get a Fender, well, you may or may not know, but most people know, all Fenders today are post-corporate buyout CBS Fenders, and then they were bought out, you know, somehow. Whoever owns them now, it's not the original company. And if you were going to be loyal to Leo Fender, then of course you'd have to steer over to G&L. Some people might actually think that in the field of Gibsons and the way they did things, being a small guitar gobbler just like Fender is now, if you wanted to be more loyal towards the spirit and the design of the Gibson, you would go get a Heritage guitar instead of a Gibson. I'm not saying I believe or would point anyone in those directions intentionally, but there is no, you know, loyalty. You're not, you know, going, oh, well, I would only get an American-made Fender because Fender forever has been blah, 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 blah. Because whatever, in the 60s, they sold it to CBS. And Gibson sold their original factory, and a lot of the luthiers stayed there and then started the Heritage Company out of the old factory. And Leo Fender left Fender and made G&L and started making the G&L Stratocaster styles and Telecaster style guitars. And in all honesty, I buy guitars a lot of times based on appearance. Another thing, when people tell you, oh, you should only ever buy a guitar if you can actually feel and play it right away. Well, okay, I think if you're never ever going to work on a guitar no matter what ever, you have absolutely no interest in using any tools to repair or set up or fix a guitar, yes, you probably should do that. You should only get you know, an excruciatingly marked up expensive guitar from a shop that you can sit down and play them all and decide which one. But like if you're like me and you love to work on stuff, you love to learn how to work on stuff, and it's actually very rewarding and entertaining to get a chance to do that, then buy them based on what you think looks good. Look at the things that are out there available, and if you're one of these people that, you know, won't feel right unless you compare things and pay $2,000 for a guitar, that's fine, that's you. But if you're one of these people kind of like me, who I believe that whatever you're going to pick out, go with your eyes and your gut and give it a try, and that's, you know, the best you can do, and be prepared to put some elbow grease and work and time and stuff into it. This guitar right now sounds extremely good. I mean, I just love it. Like, great sustain. It's got great sound. I really like it. of course, it's got the pop-in whammy bar. That's not going to give you any trouble because it's not threaded. And that's one of the things I learned and saw it, obviously corroborated by other guys. A lot of guys on YouTube will talk about this, is that you'll get a 60 cycle hum, one of my favorite channels. He's so fun to watch. He's just such an entertaining person. I really love it. But he talks about how he winds his threading in like whatever plumbing tape or some kind of pipe dope tape kind of stuff to keep it from buzzy rattling in there. Well, these push-pull ones, they don't ever buzz or rattle. So it's just really good and kind of newer and better. And you can tighten them up in there to decide how much sway. You can even, as you can see, that's just kind of holding its place wherever I put it to a degree. But it's not too tight. I can pop it out and put it back in. And it's got kind of a good notice I went up, so you know that this is actually kind of floating around it, so I can actually get notes to go up and down. And that's what you have to. So yeah, one idea I have, again, that should probably be ready to be tacked right on that unpopular opinions list, which maybe someone that's actually paying attention can formulate the list that I've covered in this entire guitar mod/build video, because I'm sure it's a pretty big list by now. My unpopular opinions, what I think about, and that I like that other people probably don't like. And so I like Strats, Super Strats. I also like Les Paul guitars, the bodies and designs of them. I can tolerate some of the more like axy, jaggedy looking instruments, like the Razorback or maybe the Zero style guitars a little bit. I think they're silly though. I mean, I think that they're just eccentric and silly instruments. I think this is a functional instrument. I think LPs are extremely functional. I do own a couple of the more sillier stuff, like my Transformers guitar is a custom Razorback. I own a Dean Angel of Death II that's based on that old Gibson design. To me, they're just too big and freaky and wonky and weird and everything. But I do not like a certain bracket of instruments, and this is just me, and I'm not telling people what to like or what not to like, but I call them stretch taffy guitars. There are lots of guitars where if you look at the body, they look like a piece of taffy that's been kind of stretched one way or the other. And when I look at a stretch taffy guitar, I can't help but think about that looks like stretch taffy, and I don't ever like any guitars that are like that. I'd never buy guitars that look like that. Maybe the Prince guitar is a stretch taffy guitar. I'm sure that if I looked, again, like 60 cycle hum, he has a ton of what I would consider to be stretch taffy guitars. And I just, so for me, and this is that unpopular opinion thing, it's really a lot how the aesthetics of the instrument are, and of course how it plays and how it feels and everything. But if someone brought me a stretch taffy guitar and it played well, I wouldn't care, because I just can't look at it. It's not something I'd buy and just to look at. So I also in the kind of in order, I like Strats #1, Super Strats #2, give a Les Paul style, LP styles, and then maybe Tellys on the end there, and then everything else goes on underneath those things, and I'm not going to really want those unless there's some weird reason for it. And so I love the Pacer, which I consider to be in the Strat, in between the Strat and Super Strat brackets. I really think the Pacer look and style is one of the greatest, if not the greatest, guitar style. A lot like what Eddie Van Halen played reminds me of the Pacer and how it looks. I just love how the Kramer Pacer guitar, which I guess Kramer's owned by Gibson now, but I love that style of instrument. I think it's a good natural evolution for the Stratocaster. So
Thanks for watching if you did, and I hope you don't be afraid to work on your own guitars. And I'm going to show a couple little quick shots of this instrument, and my video will be done.